I'd like to thank the Dudley Genealogy Club for inviting me. I'd like to thank the Pearl Crawford Memorial Library here for allowing us to have a presentation. I'm Mike Malio, and I'm an origin hunter. I'm going to talk today about those hidden treasures that are in photographs. So we're going to be talking about identifying people in old photographs. A little bit about me real quick. I'm sort of a third-generation genealogist. I've been doing genealogy for about 25 years. I've picked up a good portion of what I have from my father-in-law, who probably did genealogy for 3 or 4 decades. He picked it up from his aunt, who had started her genealogy around 1900. So I'm working on about 100 years of genealogy research. A member of the Association for Professional Genealogists, the Mass Society of Genealogists, and the International Society of Genetic Genealogists. So we also look at using DNA for your genealogy. I'm an IT guy, so if things look a little, if I talk too technical, just let me know. But I've got 10 years of collecting photos, preserving, scanning, and I've also picked up the technique of facial recognition across time and photos to try to identify people. In my collecting, my wife got things from her mother. I got things from my mother. It wasn't enough. I've collected, well, I have 25,000 photos across 7 generations. Now, the majority of those is probably over the last decade with digital photography, but still, I've got lots, and what I've been doing as part of my photographic project is contacting as many cousins as possible. What do they have? And getting their photos and sharing what I've got with them. But as you can imagine, looking at a lot of photos, it makes a person maybe a little eccentric. If you saw the flyer that I created for today's program, you'll notice this old-looking photograph. It is me. But the funny story is, when I created it just as a lark, I showed it to my family. I said, "Look at the old photo that I got," and they're going, "Wow, there's a lot of resemblance there." Then I had to tell them it was me. But it's based off of this photo from 1872. So I said, maybe I could bring the lamb chops or the mutton chop sideburns back. I think I shaved that off a couple hours later. Okay, so if you don't already, you probably will get a collection of old photos. What I've found is that every time I get a collection, most of them are unlabeled. And the ones that are labeled, I'm leery about because I keep finding ones that are mislabeled. But once you've got them, what do you do with them? Well, part of the program is to talk you through a research plan on how to identify folks. But now you've researched them. So what I've done is, what you see here is a collection of photos from a great-grandmother. A number of them are high school, Dedham High School senior class photos. And what I've done with some of those is I've actually tried to track down the descendants to see if I've got these, do you want them? So that's part of that project. But another set that we found, there was no relation to us, but we identified a town in England where most of the pictures were taken from. We shipped that whole collection off to the Historical Society in that town. Don't throw away the old pictures. Find a home. That you will find homes for these. So if a picture tells 1,000, has 1,000 words, tells 1,000 words, then an unlabeled asks 1,000 questions. So we're going to see if we can answer some of those questions. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, we'll never be able to answer every question in a photo. We probably won't be able to identify everyone in a photo, but We're going to see some techniques on getting to some of those folks. So quickly before I get into this, quick anatomy of a photo, a little history of photography. Some of the first photos were called daguerreotypes. Really got into popularity around 1830. Here's an example, Edgar Allan on a daguerreotype. Metal plate, thin film of emulsion, very fragile. So typically, when they made a daguerreotype, they put a piece of glass over the top of it so that the emulsion wouldn't scratch off. Ambrotype. The emulsion is actually on a piece of glass. And a gentleman showed me one of his ambrotypes a little earlier. So it's a piece of glass with the emulsion on it, and they put a piece of black material so that it actually shows up. These got popular around 1850, but didn't last. Tintypes, back to a metal background with a more durable emulsion on the front. Still, as you can see, this one has been aged, scratched, still not very, very durable. And those started around the 1860s. Also around the 1860s, in Europe, we have the carte de visite. These cards, it's a paper photograph on a hard card. And these are typically about 2.5 by 4. They're tiny little things. And I've got some examples in these scrapbooks over here. But that's kind of a European standard. Also, paper on card. In the 1860s, the stereograph became very popular. Here's one of Faneuil Hall. And then in the United States, the cabinet card was also very popular, starting around 1870s. And this was a 4 by 6 card. Again, paper on card. Everything changed in the 1890s, the turn of the century. Kodak, Eastman created a process that made photography very easy, disposable almost for the time period. So you had much more informal snaps. So that's why they call them snapshot. It was just a snap here, a snap there. You know, by the turn of the century, Kodak had their first little box cameras, the little brownie, the original brownies. So this is a piece of, not only tells you a little bit of what the photography through the years, but it actually kind of pigeonholes your photo into a bracket of time, and we can use that later. It's important that if you're going to be collecting, you've got to preserve. My wife and I, as we've been collecting, we've been kind of learning on the fly the correct way of preserving. When we first started collecting, we made mistakes. We cut some of the original photos. You know, today I would never do that. But some of the original ones, she cropped into ovals to fit into her book. There's probably some of those first photos that we collected that I no longer have that card back. I no longer have that photography studio. You know, So, but what we did do right is that every single photo that we got our hands on, we scanned. Now, there's a little bit of a trade-off with scanning. The act of scanning can damage the photo. So if you're going to scan it once, scan it high resolution. If you have a scanning program that will do it, scan it to what they call a TIFF format. And there's JPEG and TIFF are some of the most common digital formats for photography. If you've got a digital camera right now, it's doing everything as a JPEG. Now, the difference between a JPEG and a TIFF, really quick, JPEG is great for creating a very large image that can be printed on your printer or wherever you want to print it, but it intentionally throws away information in order to keep the file small. It's not enough information that your eye is going to recognize the difference. But if you're Preserving, you want to archive to a TIFF format, which doesn't throw away any information. It stores everything, even the stuff like the whites. It stores the white, and it's very good for then fixing the photo if it's damaged. You want to work from a very high resolution TIFF, but these files get very, very large. This book and all the current scrapbooking books use archival safe media. So it's archival safe adhesive to put it onto an archival safe backing, and over the top is a archival safe sleeve. If you've got photos in an old album, especially any kind of a pocket, and let's say it's 15 to 20 years or older, pockets or adhesive, or if you've got the kind that there's kind of a sticky back and the plastic flaps over, or the old black books where there's corners or glue on the back, your photos are getting degraded. So you need to get your photos out of those old books and into, if you don't want to get them into a book like this, get them into archival safe shoe boxes. So if you want to preserve them, take them out, scan them, put them into new medium. So figuring out who's in a photo is like being a detective. So we're going to collect our clues. And there's a lot of clues that a photo can tell you. So as you're looking at that photo, ask all these questions. Okay, do you know who is in the photo? Okay, you don't know. Maybe you don't know who it is, but look at the grouping of people. Who's next to who? Who's in the middle? Who's touching who? I mean, there's an indicator of relationship if a woman's got a hand on the man's shoulder, or sitting next to each other, or a prominent seat in the middle of the photo. Where did the photo come from? It's important to know the provenance. Did you get it from your mother? Who got it from her mother? Who got it from her mother? Or did you buy it at a yard sale? And maybe if you're really interested, you got it from the yard sale. Where did they get the photo? Talk to them. Figure out the provenance of that photo. Who was the photographer? And a lot of times on a number of these, the carte de visite or the studio cards, the cabinet cards, the publisher is right there. The photographer's right there. His studio address is right there. That can be a very important clue to the photo. What's in the photo? Take a look at artifacts. I was looking at a photo just a minute ago, and in the back, little tiny in the corner, was a telephone pole. That kind of gives you a time frame of, it might have not have been a telephone pole, it might have been a telegraph pole, it might have just been an electrical pole, but it gives you a kind of a time frame of the photo. What's the architecture, if there is any in the photo? Are there guns? What type of gun is it? Are there toys, dolls? Is there a telephone, a TV? Look at the artifacts, and the artifact may give you a time frame. And for me, it's all about getting back to the right time of the photo. And from there, we can do some other research. What kind of clothing are they wearing? Hats, scarves, collars. Now, I'm not an expert in clothing, but there are a number of experts out there that they can look at the piece of clothing that the individual is wearing and say, oh, they can get down to a year. They might get it down to a season of the year. So you might get lucky with the type of clothing that they're wearing. Take a look at where the photo, was it in the studio? Was it outside? If it was outside, what can you tell about that outside? Why was the picture taken? What's the occasion? Even if you have to guess what the occasion was, create a theory, create multiple theories about what's going on in the photo.